Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye, standing in for Yori Folari, fondly called Uncle Yori on the show. Uncle Yori is on vacation, so you'll probably be seeing my face for a bit. If you've been struggling to get cash from ATMs or banks lately, you're not alone. Cash scarcity is back. As a matter of fact, we understand that POS operators have increased charges by 150 to 200%, and that they are even getting their monies now from traders. But what is causing it? How is this affecting the economy? New data from the Central Bank of Nigeria reveals that the amount of cash outside the banking system has skyrocketed, reaching over 4 trillion naira. Now, what are the implications of this for inflation, the effectiveness of some of CBN's policy? Let's even take a deeper look at the numbers. According to CBN, the amount of cash circulating in the country has seen a huge jump. From January 2023 to January 2024, it's increased by 163%. That's from 1.39 trillion naira to 3.65 trillion naira. By June 2024, we've seen the figure surpass 4 trillion for the first time, reaching 4.05 trillion naira. What's even more interesting is that most of this cash is being held outside banks. In January 2023, it was around 792 billion naira, but by January this year, it had grown by 314% to 3.28 trillion naira. By June, it had peaked at 3.7 trillion naira. Fast forward to October this year, we're looking at over 90% of the country's cash still being held outside of formal banks. Essentially, it shows that there is more cash circulating in the economy, but it's not being held in banks. Instead, people are keeping it outside of the formal financial system. This shift in how cash is being circulated is our conversation this morning. And what are the big implications for the economy? To help us break it down and explore solutions, I'm joined by Dr. Muda Yusuf, who's Director, CEO of the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise and former DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning, Dr. Muda. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ifemi. Great to be with you.
Glad to have you again. So they say the currency in circulation outside the banking system has quadrupled in the past year. What do you consider the primary implications of this trend for the economy?
Well, there is really nothing unusual about the fact that we have over 90% of currency outside the banking system. Currency or cash is a payment instrument, and payment instruments are supposed to reside with those who will use them. What you normally have within the banking system are maybe 10%, 15% or so. Okay. Generally and historically, over 90% of cash has always been outside the banking system, because the essence of cash is for those who want to undertake cash transaction. So it doesn't make sense for us to expect that cash that is a payment instrument will not be sitting in the bank. Certainly not. The essence of the amount of cash in the bank is to enable it to circulate. People who have surplus cash will go and deposit it. Those who need cash will now take it away. So there is really nothing unusual about the fact that you have about over 90% of cash outside the banking system.
The challenge, however, might be with where...
No, let me just land. Yes. The reference that was being made was an unusual one. Okay. If you take January, February 2023, that was when we had the Naira redesign. And at that time, there was a deliberate policy, for whatever reasons, because it was not a monetary policy objective, to take cash out of the system. We are talking about January, February, when we had the elections. And you can imagine, you remember the kind of crisis it created. In fact, at that point, the cash currency in circulation fell below 1 trillion naira, about 900 billion or so. Something referencing to, relates to the data that you just said. So that was an unusual period. And our currency has never fallen, and for a very long time, it has never fallen. And the kind of crisis it's created for everybody. Movement became paralyzed, businesses became paralyzed. But after the elections, the situation now started to normalize. And it came up to 3.5, 3.6, 3. So now we're at 4.5 trillion as at October. Total currency in circulation. Currency outside bank is now about 4.3 trillion. So it's not unusual. You know, what has happened is that the supply of cash has not been commensurate with the growth in the demand for cash.
Okay.
That's a very fundamental issue. Take, for instance, somebody who normally take public transportation. In January, you are spending maybe 500 naira, either for keke or for kada or for all these commuter buses. As we speak now, you probably need maybe 1,000 naira for that. So your cash requirement has increased because of the increase in price. So if you look at all the segments where citizens need cash, their cash requirement has increased. We are talking now about places like the informal sector. We are talking about places like the rural economy. We are talking about, you know, people who sell things and who don't want cash. Take, for instance, people who are selling cattle. A head of cattle a year ago was maybe 500,000 naira. A head of cattle today is close to 1 million naira. So if the full animal says, please, I don't want transfer, I want cash, you have to provide 1 million. But so the demand for cash has increased significantly. The supply of cash has not correspondingly moved up. I'm not saying that there are no other factors which we will also discuss as we progress, but that's a very fundamental issue.
At 4.5 trillion, is that enough cash in the system?
Given where we are now, it is not enough cash. There are ratios we use in economics to measure the amount of, or the degree of cashless economy, or the amount of cash we use. We call it currency in circulation to GDP ratio. In Nigeria, it is one of the lowest. Currently, it's about, 1.8 to 2%. In many other economies, it's far higher. In USA, for instance, it's 8%. In India, it's 13%. In UK, it's 4%. In Japan, it's rather high, 18.6%. In the EU, that's the Eurozone, it's 10%. We are doing just about 2%. So that is to tell you that we have made a lot of progress as far as this cashless policy is concerned. A lot of transactions are taking place on the electronic platform system. That is what this data is telling us. But for the elements of the economy that require cash, the cash is certainly not sufficient. Especially as a result of the skyrocketing prices of goods.
Indeed.
You now need more cash to buy whatever you have been buying with cash before. So that is what I think is basically responsible.
Is it as simple as printing more cash?
Is it?
Is it as simple as printing more cash?
Of course, if you need more cash, you print it. But it's not the same thing as the kind of cash or currency printing that we used to talk about ways and means. The ways and means is to finance deficit. This one is to ensure that you have seamless payment system. The cash component of the payment system needs to improve. And if you compare it with other platforms, just to show you, we are talking of currency in circulation now of just about 4 trillion. Half year, this is CBN data now. Half year, check transaction, that's January to June, was 8.7 trillion naira transaction using checks. ATM, 12.2 trillion naira. POS, 85.9 trillion. That's to tell you how much transfer is taking place on other platforms. Now, internet transfers, 825.5 trillion. We are not talking billion, no. We are talking trillion here. That's internet transfers. NEFT transfer, 366 trillion. USSD, 2 trillion. Mobile transfers, 159 trillion. Direct debit, 12.5 trillion. Total, half year, in terms of electronic payment that has taken place in this economy, is 1,558.9 trillion. That's a lot of money.
So that is to show you the amount of transaction
that is taking place. So when you now compare this with the availability of just about 4 trillion for cash transfer, you can see that it's a far cry. You know, and this is also to tell us that as far as electronic payment is concerned, we have made significant progress.
But just for clarity, yes, that data you just read out, is it showing that there is more online transaction than cash payments taking place right now in Nigeria?
Of course. I'm talking about 1,558 trillion.
Compared to
currency in circulation of about 4 trillion, 4.3 trillion.
So the CBN last week directed deposit money banks to prioritize sufficient cash disbursement. And they were even warning them that they were going to penalize cash hoarding and diversion. But in the same breath, we're hearing from the Association of Senior Staff of Banks saying that the cash shortage is as a result of CBN's inability to meet cash demands. So there seems to be some level of blame game here. What do you think is responsible for where we are right
now? Now, what I just said now tallies with the position of the Association of Banks. The cash available is not sufficient to meet the cash requirements in the economy. Because the cash requirements in the economy are practically doubled because of the high demand for cash and high prices of goods and services. Even the people you give tips to, somebody you are giving a tip of 200 naira before, you have to up it to about 500 for the thing to make meaning. And you can't go on Danfo or Keke and say you want to transfer. It doesn't work. So all these segments of the economy that require cash, their demand for cash has practically doubled. The increase in cash, in currency in circulation has increased maybe by maximum maybe 30%. The demand for cash has increased by almost 100% or even more. So that's a very fundamental issue. Now, that is not to say that we have all manner of sharp practices. I mean, even before now, if you need a mint, brand new notes, you don't get it in the banks.
You have to literally buy it.
You have to literally buy it. And you see this, you go to parties and these things are being sold freely, even before now. So there are all sorts of malpractice happening within the banking system. People selling these brand new notes.
We're going to get there because, the CBN is talking about penalties to the tune of 150 million. We'll talk about that in the course of this conversation. But the rising trend of cash hoarding, some have blamed it on the proliferation of points of sale services. Do you think POS services has brought more gains or drawbacks to our economy?
No, it has been very beneficial. I mean, the POS service providers have brought a lot of value to the economy. Now, currently, we have about over 3 million POS operators in the country. So from a job creation perspective, that is something positive. Then from the service perspective, I mean, imagine the nearest bank branch you have to your house maybe is 4 or 5 kilometers. In these days of high cost of transportation, if you want to go to banks, you want to go and you want to go and withdraw cash, it could take you maybe 1,000, 2,000 to go there. And next door to you, you have a POS person who will charge you 200 for maybe 10,000. Although because of this current scarcity, maybe it has gone up more. So in terms of ease of access to cash, they have been very beneficial. Secondly, they are also a lot more proactive. In order to meet the cash demand of the citizens, they don't sit for people to bring cash to them. They go out there to mobilize cash. They go to retail outlets, they go to filling stations, they do all sorts of things.
They now get their cash from traders.
Yes. The whole idea is to render a service to the people. So they are filling a gap and they are creating a lot. Then beyond that, they have facilitated financial inclusion significantly. Many people who don't even used to have bank accounts now, by virtue of this POS thing, most of them have opened bank accounts. So in terms of financial inclusion, they have been very, very beneficial. So I don't have any issue with the POS operators. They are bringing a lot of value to the economy.
Many Nigerians have issues with them because it has to do with their charges skyrocketing to up to 200% in the face of the current crash country.
No, you see, when you have scarcity, prices will go up. Prices will, I mean, in the days of the Naira redesign, do you know how much people are buying currency? Yeah? When Emefiele was mopping up currency, people were paying up to 500, 1,000, 2,000 for a 10,000 Naira transaction. It was as bad as that. But when the currency, when the supply increased, the charges came down to 200 for 10,000. So it's a scarcity problem. Once you have scarcity, prices will go up. That is why I will agree with what the Association of the Bank Staff said. We need to address the issue of supply. And I've said it, if you look at it properly, look at the demand for cash, and the CBN has very robust research department. They can go and look at the trend. Demand transactions, increase in prices, and demand for cash. I just read out the amount of transactions that are taking place on this platform. These transactions on all these electronic platforms, many of them have doubled, even tripled, because of the high cost of things. A car you are buying at maybe 5 million, you now need maybe 15 million, 20 million to buy. These are things that are blowing up these transactions. So what is happening on the electronic platform is also happening on the cash platform. But because the cash platform is not elastic, you can't just go and print more cash. Unlike all these electronic platforms, they are very elastic. There is no limit to the amount of transactions you can do. But for cash, there's a limitation because of supply.
The electronic transaction still has its issues, though. Poor transfer services by banks. You see a lot of frustrated users now who have to wait days or even weeks to have a reversal done on failed transactions. Some have questioned how come fintechs, relatively new companies, now do better in that regard compared to the established ones. There are banks now that most Nigerians like to use because all you need to do is register your phone number, and then the moment you send the money, the other person on the other side gets the alert. Do you think that, what do you think is actually happening here when it comes to adoption of digital payment systems? One would think that banks that are more established will do it better.
No. More established banks are more conservative. So as far as technology application is concerned, they are not as innovative, as creative, as tech-savvy as the fintechs. And you can see the dynamics even in the economy now within that space. Some of the fintechs that even call themselves microfinance banks are now doing more business than the traditional banks.
Some of them have up to 40 million users.
Yes. And they are very cost effective. They don't have branches all over the place with very heavy, fees cost and all of that. They are very, very efficient. So it's a technology thing. And I think the traditional banks are now also struggling to, catch up with it. But clearly the fintechs are providing leadership as far as this tech.
And perhaps there are also lessons to learn from them. Let's get to George. George has called in from Ikeja. Good morning, George.
Hello?
I can hear you. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Okay. Good morning, Nifemi, and good morning to Dr. Yusuf.
Good morning.
Dr. Yusuf, what you are saying is very clear and convincing. But I want to draw your attention to the CBN standard. When the CBN governor came in, he said he was going to introduce aggressive legislation in terms of this currency we are talking about and exchange rates. I'm not seeing that aggressive legislation. What do I mean? For example, in this cash issue now, if you go to the remotest village in this country, you go to a party there, you will see the mint notes being sold. But go to any bank counter, you will not see, they will not give you a mint note there. The same bankers are now crying that CBN has short supplied them. Even the one that the CBN gave to them, they don't circulate it to the customers. So who do we hold responsible? The same thing with the rate of exchange. I don't know how I can accept 1,700 naira to a dollar. Anytime the CBN governor shakes body, quote and unquote, you see that the rate will just suddenly drop. But he will relax. As soon as he relaxes, you see it jumping up again. So I don't know how we can reach him, but maybe people like you can be talking to him, that he needs to constantly shake body so that the populace will benefit from it. This is a country that needs aggressive legislation, like he himself pointed out. I think that is what we need. Thank you very much. The information and that you are dishing out and your perspective just reflects what the truth is. Good morning.
Thank you for your contribution. You want to quickly react to that?
Yes, I think the point he made is very valid. And, we already even talked about it. These mint notes. I don't remember when last you go into a banking hall.
And then you get mint.
And you get mint. This is a legacy issue, actually. You go to parties, and our VIPs, especially with due respect, our politicians, when they are traveling to their constituencies, they need a lot of cash. And because they are also prime customers to all these banks, it's a question of a phone call that we need so much cash and it has to be mint. So that issue is there. Apart from the fact that those who are bank staff collude with all these currency traders to be selling cash. That is a different issue. Because when they sell the cash, they take in the old notes, they swap it.
Indeed.
It's essentially swapping, So I think, and now we have been told that there's going to be a penalty for that. Because there has been so much impunity. You go to parties, you see them hawking.
The only places you see new notes are in parties.
Yes.
The CBN has announced a slam a fine of 150 million per branch on deposit money banks found guilty of facilitating illegal flow. But I'm just wondering.
And the second point he talked about is about exchange rates. Now, in fairness with the CBN, in the last 4 or 5 months, we have seen some relative stability in the Naira exchange rate. And part of the reason is what he also said. The CBN now, because we are seeing some level of improvement in our reserves. Our foreign reserve now is around 40 billion and slightly getting up there. And the outlook generally for the exchange rate and for Forex is also looking positive. So we are seeing more frequent intervention, which he called shake body. Every time the CBN shakes body. So the CBN is trying its best, but it can only intervene to the extent of the reserves that it has. And you cannot afford to throw all your reserves into, to support the currency. So I think we are making some progress.
But when you say stability, there are some who measure progress in this regard relative to what the dollar was before, the advent of this administration.
No, you see, there are two issues with the exchange rate. There is the issue of the price, which is the exchange rate itself. There is the issue of the volatility. Those two issues are important. What I'm saying is that in terms of the volatility, we have seen an improvement in the moderation of the volatility as a result of the frequent intervention by the CBN and the introduction of a lot of measures. Now we are talking about electronic, foreign exchange platform and all of that. The CBN is trying to plug, because there are a lot of sharp practices. Indeed. So quite a lot is happening. But as to the fundamental issue of improving the rates, we have to do a lot more with respect to exports. We have to do a lot more with respect to import substitution. If we import less, the currency will firm up. If we export more, the currency will firm up. So we need to work on those two legs to reduce our importation. And luckily, we are making some progress now with petroleum products. The importation of petroleum products used to be a very big burden on our foreign reserves.
Let us take David's call. David has called in from Benin. Good morning, David. Good morning, David. We'll get back to David subsequently. So there are conversations around, if you go to banks these days, the highest you probably will get is 10,000 or 5,000, as against the 500,000 naira for individuals, and I think 5 million for corporate organizations. So the implication of that is what we call the commodification of the naira. The fact that gone are the days where you can collect as much as you want in the banks. It's now out there, and then you probably would most times now have to pay for the naira. Some have said perhaps the issue has to do with the non-attractive fees that Nigerians get to pay, saving their money in banks. There are conversations about the charges and what have you. Do you think that these are things that the CBN can also revise, the approach to which, banks can become more attractive, and then we can reduce our reliance on cash in that regard?
First of all, let me say again, in terms of reliance on cash, we have made a lot of progress based on these statistics on our e-payments, but it can be better. Indeed. Now, secondly, is that the POS are offering a bigger incentive for cash than the banks. Before now, and I think that policy has been reviewed now, if you bring cash to the bank beyond a particular threshold, you'll be penalized for bringing the cash to the bank. You pay a levy. I've forgotten what percentage it is now. You pay a levy for bringing so much cash to the bank. But that has been reviewed. But the point is that when you have two constituencies, one will come to your doorstep to say, okay, can you give me this cash? I will give you so amount in terms of commission. One will sit comfortably in his office, expect you to bring the cash to them.
And still slam you with charges.
And slam you with charges and all of that. So there is serious competition for cash between the POS operators and the banks.
But is it safe for our economy for the POS to hold more cash than the deposit money banks?
No. You see, it's not the ideal thing. It's not the ideal thing. But again, it's a question of the convenience that they make available. If you have an economy, how many people have bank accounts? Go to all our rural areas. How many of them have bank branches? It is the POS people that are servicing them. Go to many communities, many remote areas. They don't have bank branches. So it's a dynamic that we need to relate to. But what I'm saying is that if you don't address the critical issue of supply, because if you have enough supply, we have enough within the banks, we have enough within the POS environment. And if you have a cash of, currently we have about 4.3 trillion naira currency in circulation. You can increase it to about 6 trillion. It doesn't take anything away from monetary policy. It's a payment instrument. And what is 6 trillion compared to the figures that I've rolled out? Good. So we need to address the fundamental issue of the supply. Again, let me emphasize, prices have gone up by twice, 3 times. And for elements that are using cash, they need more cash for their transaction.
It sounded like you don't expect those prices to come down.
No, we are relating with the reality today.
I understand, but when we print more money, is that not giving a sense of permanence to what the prices are?
No, not at all. We are talking about facilitating payment system.
Reverend Dominic has called in from Alimosho. Good morning, Reverend. Good morning, Reverend. Are you there?
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Femi.
Good morning. Please go ahead.
Good morning to your guest. Can you hear me?
Clearly, yes. Please go ahead.
Please, I want to just maybe start where my friend George stopped. To beg your guest, which I know very well, very versatile economist, to beg the government to make something seamless. When you live in a nation and policies are made and nobody follows that policy, most of us, at least at Zoka Chok, are confused. So you are saying it there. In the bank or CBN bank law, corporate organizations have access to 5 billion, while individuals have access to 500,000. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I had to settle a quarrel in bank hall in one of my bankers. And I want to mention the name because it's common. GTB. A man came to take 100,000 naira. This man must have hundreds of millions of naira in that bank. And they said he must take 20,000. The man stood on the line, stopped everybody in the bank that he must take 100,000 naira. And he was asking everybody, What am I going to use 20,000 naira to do? I have business in my house I want to pay. I have plumbers they will not take transfer. They need this cash, 10,000, 20,000. But the woman in the bank, I pity the bank manager who was begging us that they don't have money. Nobody is bringing cash into the bank. What I'm trying to say, what kind of policies are we running? You made a policy of 5 million to corporate organizations and 500,000 to private individuals. But you cannot go to bank and get 10,000 naira. Yet 2 days ago, I had to get 4,000 naira because what they packed in their ATM was 200, and they can only move only 4,000. When I want to apply for another one, he refused me. How do you manage a system like that when you cannot follow a policy through? There's haphazard everywhere. The POS are having money, clean money, but we have no money. As a pastor, before service finish, they will line up in the church. The pastor, we need money. We need money. So you distribute it to POS. And this policy makes people, they don't go to bank again. So if there's money in the hands of individuals, it is bank policy. Hence, I put my money in the bank, I can't access it. Why should I take money to the bank? We must make a policy we must follow. If the Nigeria must work well, all corporate individuals, all the individuals must, align themselves and work with the policy. So I think it will be well. But the financial world today is haphazard. They don't know who to blame. CBN are blaming commercial bank. Commercial bank are blaming the depositor. There's no money anywhere. But when you go to party, you see meat. The way we sell our money in parties is in short to anywhere in any world. Please, Dr. Yusuf, could you talk to the government to follow their policy through? Either they're going to change it or they will continue with it. You can't tell me I will go to bank and have 500,000. When I go there, I can't get 20,000 naira. How does it work? I have mechanics to pay bills for. I have pure water to buy. How do we work? You have spoken well. So we must go back to the government and let them setting this policy. So things will go seamless and well to the Nigerians and to everybody. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Reverend. Dr. Yusuf, they say you are the one that has government's number.
No, I don't have
to let them know. But it can really be frustrating.
It can be
if you have money and you can't get it.
You have money, and
especially during this holiday.
There's a policy that as an individual, I think you can cash up to maybe 100 or 500. As a corporate, you can take up. There is that policy which he referred to. Now you go to a bank. They are now rationing cash, 20,000. Really, it can be very, very frustrating because there are instances where you really need this cash. And just as I said, the amount of cash we have now is not sufficient to power this economy, given the fact that the demand for cash has increased. It's not a question of directing the banks that they should go and load their systems with, their ATM with cash. You can only load what you have. A cash of 4.5 or 4.2 trillion or 4.3 trillion. Our total cash currency is 4.5 trillion. And over the last 1 year, the demand for cash has doubled. You cannot still keep that kind of threshold. The amount of cash has increased maybe marginally, maybe by about 20 or 30%. The demand for cash has increased by almost 100%. I just cited the example. No, he cited the example of plumbers and all of it. The amount you are paying a plumber 2 years ago is not what you pay a plumber now. The amount you used to buy some of these things, the people that are digging the ground for you if you are constructing, it's not the same thing. You have those in construction. They cannot be transferred. They need a lot of cash to pay their workers.
Hold that thought for a minute. Let's attempt to take David's call. David has called in from Benin. David, good morning. Are you there now? Good morning, David. We'll probably get back to that conversation subsequently. But I'm wondering how you respond to economists who have cautioned that in the face of the inflation we have right now, growth in money supply must match corresponding increase in production. And they have said, even if we print more money, if production doesn't increase, are we not going to further escalate inflation challenges?
No, we need to get these things clear. There is a difference between money supply and currency in circulation. Money supply includes deposits that people have. As I'm speaking to you now, money supply as at, I think maybe October, was 107 trillion naira. That is total money supply.
That's the money in deposit?
No, money supply generally, which we call liquidity in the economy, which is what the CBN tries to manage from time because of inflation. The cash component of the money supply is 4.5. You can see the gap. So the problem is not with giving more cash to the economy. If you increase the 4.5 trillion to 6 trillion, it cannot affect anything in terms of monetary policy.
But why do you think the CBN is holding back to print more cash?
That is why we have to advocate for more cash to be printed.
Perhaps you know something we don't know.
No. And let's also make this clear. There is the issue of printing of cash to finance government operation. That is ways and means. That is one that is very injurious to the economy. Under the last CBN dispensation, we had printing of over 20 trillion.
Let's take
that one is very inflationary. But what you are talking now is currency in circulation.
Let's take Olumide's call from Abuja. Good morning, Olumide. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yes. You see, I observed in Dr. Bashiru's statement that we have gaps.
Dr. Yusuf.
I'm also happy that we have trust deficit. And trying to fill that, I want to ask him, can the CBN create a department, or do they have a department that can go into commercial banking to fill in the gap and to bring trust back into currency handling and its management? Okay, if I want to cite an example, I just want to propose or suggest that maybe the CBN can use the network of all our traditional chiefdoms or kingdoms to establish a department around to have a commercial unit that people can go there, use their own BVN number to create a voucher or maybe bank bill like draft, so that in this time of scarcity of currency, you can go there and the CBN you need to create a voucher or a bill, a bank bill for you. Of course, it's not like the general money. That will create that voucher for you, maybe in 10,000 or in 20,000 or whatever, that you will take to the market or to a particular place where it will be accepted. So we will skip this kind of scarcity seasonally. Can the CBN do that? Because I believe there are many things we can do to fill in the gap or to bring back the trust. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olumide, for your contribution. What do you make of that idea?
Well, it's a very novel idea, because sometimes when you have a crisis, you think out of the box, outside the box. So I think that is what he's doing, he's trying to say. But again, he's talking about maybe creating another form of legal tender. You know, we have this naira now as a legal tender, which you can take anywhere. He's talking about a voucher or something that you can also use, you know, for purposes of payment. Because cash is a payment instrument. So whatever you can present in exchange for whatever you want to buy is a payment instrument. Whether you are doing transfers or whether you are presenting cash. Well, it's a suggestion that you can look at. But my view is that we need to deal with the fundamental problem of supply. There is no other way around it. If your supply is not matching the demand, you will have a crisis. So we need to deal with the supply. The demand for cash has increased by almost 150 to 200% because of the high inflation that we have.
Indeed.
So that, for me, is fundamental. That does not detract from or diminish the fact that we have malpractices within the system. Especially this maintenance and all of that. Those things are there, and we need to deal with that. With the appropriate.
Let's take David's call. Good morning, David. Good morning, David. You may have to turn down the volume of your TV set so that we can have this conversation. David from Benin, good
Okay,
morning.
good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning, sir. Okay, I think it's come down already. All right, can you hear me now?
Go ahead, please, with your contribution.
Yes, I think, please, you guys need to help us make an appeal to the CBN because this is really a serious issue, and I find the guest there, he has made some very good points. Then another thing the CBN should understand is that this is festive season. Nobody is holding money. People are collecting the money they've worked for from January to December to buy things. So, as far as I'm concerned, the amount of money the CBN has printed is not enough to go with its circulation. There was a day I met the CBN officials going around banks and trying to tell people don't withdraw money, withdraw only 5,000 or withdraw only 20,000. I asked him, I said, yeah, I think I should do online transactions. If I want to enter a box, will I do transfer? He said I should withdraw only 20,000. And this 20,000, I can only collect 4 times. And each time you're going to charge me, then I charge it on that. So, what do you mean? If I go to the market, I want to buy tomatoes, you allow me collect only. I can't go to the market with 20,000 naira to buy 10 to feed for a week. 20,000 naira will not be enough for me. As a single man, as a bachelor, it cannot. And you make me collect only 20,000 naira. So, what now? If I want to buy tomatoes in the market, I cannot make transfers. So, please help us make passionate appeal to the CBN that they should print money in circulation. I don't know the kind of policy they are, whether they call it monetary policy, I don't know. But this policy, it is really the common man, the poor man that each of us is. Because the rich men out there that drive cars, they have people in banks, they just make control and they get the money. So please and please, I want you guys to help us make this appeal. They should understand that the money people have worked from January to December, we want to collect to use. Go to the bank, no money. So please, then as for the name card, I think over here in most of the ATMs have names, indeed. But it's only when you get there is no money. And they should increase the amount of money somebody can collect. 20,000 and 5,000. No, now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your contribution. So on one hand, we have the cash scarcity. On the other hand, because I've noticed even when you go to filling station and you need to do transfer, they ask you to add some charges. They ask you to add some money on top of what you're supposed to pay as bank charges. Do you think that it's about time we need to start penalizing some of these banks that will deduct your money over an online transfer and insist that you wait for about 7 working days before it can be reversed? Because that's a big discouragement for online transaction, especially for poorer people who don't have the liberty of waiting that long.
Yes. I think that is important. It's a regulatory issue. And we should also even have a threshold, just as we are doing the tax reform. We should have a threshold of transaction that should not even be charged at all. Especially transactions maybe 20,000 and below and all of that, which relates to a lot more of the common people. Indeed. We should have that kind of policy. Because right now, even if you're a beggar, once you do some, either you receive a lot or something is charged on you. I think we should have that kind of thing.
So, when we talk about...
But the point that he made,
yes,
and the CBN has to take this very seriously. We cannot have a situation where absence of cash will be crippling economic activities. This is a festive season. A lot of people are going to their villages and all. You need cash. You can't go there, you want to give somebody 10,000, 5,000, 1,000, 2,000. How many people will you transfer to? So we should not make this to become another Naira redesign crisis. Although this is not a deliberate policy. This is far, far different from the Naira redesign, because you can't compare the crisis now with the crisis of January, February of 2023.
Indeed.
But the CBN has to do something. The cash available in the system is far, far too less than the cash that this economy...
Dr. Yusuf, it's 9 days to Christmas. Is there a short-term solution to this to this problem on the part of the CBN?
Of course, there is. I mean, it's a question. I don't know how fast it takes them to make cash available or to print cash or to make more cash available in the system. But something can still be done. Something needs to be done and needs to be done urgently. Because the way a lot of complaints are coming from all over the country, I don't think it's good for even the optics of the central bank.
Let's take Mazi Okorafo's call from Arochukwu. Good morning, Mazi. Mazi, are you there?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Please go ahead with your contribution.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I can hear you clearly. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, that's Mazo Crap from our people. You see, this issue of scarcity of funds, it seems it's an every year sale. For the past 15 years, you have been having this when it comes to festivity period, especially during Christmas and at the end of the year. Now, the question is, does it mean in the CBN that they don't have projects for whatever they forecast? They don't forecast things like this. Because the irony of the story that some of the money you see in the bank, man, very dirty and smelly. That one can even contact one kind Yamayama disease. Because some of the money they will bring for you now. And even the so-called the new currency they will give us now, mint. Sometimes they will portion to some of these stuff or gas. When they come to ceremony, they start bringing out this money. But the masses, when they go to bank, you get. But the question now is that I was totally disappointed to take to the bank. They will tell you should wait let somebody come and pay you money before they honor your check. I think what? At this present day in Nigeria, and this is supposed to be every year, it doesn't work well. The monetary policy of the CBN Nigeria is getting out of just, I don't know whether it is because of the people working there, or the geological aspect of life, or IMF, or World Bank are dictating how the CBN should operate at the end of the day. It's not heading. Honestly speaking, they should do the needful. Before Christmas time, there should be plenty money in circulation. People go to bank to collect their salary. You tell them to go and do it. When you go to POS, the POS will not be giving you money. Where did the POS people get that money they are giving to customers? Is it not from the bank? Who are the bank officers giving them? There should be proper monitoring of banks, whether the local government is over this manager or gas people. Please do the needful. Stop crippling our economy. Stop keeping people at high resistance. Stop people at high tension.
All right.
Good morning, Mazu Crawford.
Thank you, Mazi, for your contribution. Well, one thing is certain, CBN has to sing a different song, apart from saying directing banks to
No, they have to do something.
And saying they will penalize them.
To do something. And the irony is that even the little cash available now, those who have influence, have more access
to it.
So they just take it. I mean, phone call to the branch manager, they take out the cash. So the ordinary people are left in the cold. So something has to be done urgently, because this is a basic, fundamental problem of scarcity, inadequate supply of cash by the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Ebonyi State government just recently announced 150,000 naira Christmas bonus. Can imagine civil servants having money for Christmas and they cannot cash it.
Exactly.
It's going to be terrible. As we go now, just on a final note, I wanted to speak to what you think, the Apex Bank must begin to do differently in the new year, vis-a-vis the economic challenges of this year.
Well, what the CBN needs to do first. One of the biggest worries we have around monetary policy now is the high interest rate. I'm personally not comfortable with the fact that as an investor in this economy, you want to take money from the bank, you are paying interest rate of 30%, 35%. That is killing business. That is a major disincentive to investment. We should move away from the fixation that the only way to tame inflation is to be increasing interest rates. That is not good for the economy. And you can see the data, even at the GDP growth in Q3. While the banks were growing at over 30%, the real sector was growing at 1%. Some of the sectors were contracting. So even as we proceed with reforms, we should avoid policies that will strangulate those who are creating jobs. So that for me is key. Secondly, the CBN should sustain the momentum of this periodic intervention. We must acknowledge that they have brought some stability to the banking system and all of that.